Okay, what's up everybody? Today is Monday, February 16th, 2026. Most of you know who it is. It's Luther Wilson III, Upside Property Services, Kansas City Real Estate. So let's jump right into it. Before I get into today's message, I have to refer back to my last video. Okay, so on my last video, I took a deeper dive into how we can go into the real estate investment process more prepared and how we can combat certain things. There's a lot of misconceptions, misunderstandings, certain assumptions that I've made as a real estate investor, and I've noticed time and time again, there's certain expectations that my clients have or my partners have, and they don't really match up with reality, okay? So one of the points that I made on the last video on how we can combat or go in more prepared when it comes to renovation projects, okay? That's a huge thing. Okay, going into renovation projects with the right mindset and the right strategy, of course, is key. But there's one other way to combat that I did not mention, and I need to mention now before I get into the next three items. And if you are investing, you're already in the mix, maybe you're considering investing or getting back into the game, one way that you can combat or go in more prepared is to not do renovation projects at all. That's one way. Okay, there's other ways to invest without having to take on major renovation projects. You can try to minimize them or avoid them completely, but for a lot of investors who get in and they do a number of deals and they figure out what's what, they start to scale back on the types of projects that they take on, meaning the size and scope, and then they also get more strategic, or they're more mindful, if you will, about the types of locations that they invest in. So those are two big things, right? You know, if we're going over budget and past the deadline on virtually every single renovation project, okay, maybe we shouldn't do older homes in the inner city, and maybe we should look at investing in other ways where we can avoid renovation projects completely, or at least take it down so our average reno isn't necessarily 50 to 60,000. It could be more like, 5 to 15,000, something like that. Okay, so that's just to, kind of put a bow or recap on the last video, because, that's one big point that I wanted to make. There's other ways to invest in real estate. You got mortgages, you got private loans, or, you got notes of some sort. Okay, you can be a backer of sorts and invest more passively into a business or into an investment firm that's already up and rolling, or one that is about to get rolling, type of thing. Okay, so moving forward, there are three other really big expectations that we've had as real estate investors, and I did a second video, okay, talking about those three. And now I want to get into how we can go in more prepared, or how we can combat those expectations or real estate investing myths, if you will, okay? So a big one, number 4, all the money that you've invested will be returned back to you in a timely manner. This is a big one. And a question that I want to pose for those who have portfolios as we speak, or if they're growing their portfolio, a key factor, something that I've thought about more so lately than I ever had before, is how much debt is associated with that portfolio, okay? That's one thing. Another thing is, how much do I have, or how much do you have of your own money, okay? So you got the underlying debt for the portfolio, you got sometimes your own capital that's invested into the portfolio, and then a third key factor, which all goes part of the capital stack, and I did a video on that a number of weeks ago. The third big thing is how much outside capital is tied up in that portfolio. Whether you have 3 doors 10 doors, 100 doors, 1,000 doors. More often than not, there's going to be some type of underlying debt, first lien position debt as part of the capital stack again. All right. Then you got investor capital. Okay. If it's not your own capital, a lot of times it could be a business partner, a limited partner, family member, friend, or associate who's got their capital tied up into that portfolio. And that's another thing that does not get talked about as much. And so how we can combat that is by, so much of this goes back to the capital, the strategy, and the operations, okay? How much capital is available, right? And when that capital needs to be delivered back to whoever put that capital up, right? Then knowing that helps you determine what kind of strategy makes sense. Then from there, you got to operate the business, which I get into some of that too. So if you know, like as an example, I consider him a buddy, a friend of mine now. He's been in the real estate space here in the Kansas City market for longer than I have. And he has been, actively wanting to borrow, or actually he's been wanting me to borrow his money. He's an investor. He's a real estate broker. He's also a private money lender. Over the last 2 to 3 years, we've been in contact, and he's actively been asking me about opportunities and ways that we could structure things. But at the end of the day, I haven't taken the leap with him yet. And I say yet because I may at some point in the future if things line up with the capital, the strategy, and operations. But for now, I've had to say no because he wants his money back within 6 to 12 months, meaning that there's going to be a balloon due. He did say that he might consider doing 2 to 3 years with me. But at the end of that 2 to 3 years, it's the same thing. I'm gonna need to pay all of the money that he loaned me back in full. And it goes against my main strategy, which is buy and hold, long-term, single-family home investments with the use of seller financing, okay? If I use short-term debt for that type of investment strategy or model, it's gonna ruin my portfolio, okay? So ask me how I know. All right, so we gotta be mindful, right? We can't assume that we're gonna go in all the time. We can't, in some cases, we'll get away with it. For the fix and flippers out there, okay, this is a huge point because after you do a certain number of fix and flip, right, you realize you may have broken even, or if you've gotten lucky, you might be up a few thousand per door that you've done. But think about all of the time and the energy and the capital and overseeing the rehab and paying off the short-term debt and paying off the outside capital. How much did you really pay yourself? If it takes you 3 to 12 months or 6 to 24 months to do one fix and flip, and you do 5 to 10 or hundreds of those at the end of the time frame, right? Are you really up? Or at the end of those 20 or 50 flips, maybe you paid yourself something. Hopefully you got all your hard money loans paid off, but what about the outside capital? Did you get them squared? I can't tell you how many investors I've met who have been in that situation or are currently in that situation, or they're headed toward that situation as we speak. And so I have a mentor, a few mentors, but one in particular. He tells people to stop fix and flipping, okay? That may not be an option for you at this time, but at some point in the future, it may be a very good option. And that is one way that you can combat things, okay? So going in, now I just take it for granted. I'm not gonna lie to a client or a partner. I'm gonna tell them, hey, if we're gonna put up money, we're probably gonna need additional capital. Here's what it's gonna cost for me and my team to execute, okay? And we need to be prepared, okay? In most cases, again, not all cases, but we need to be prepared to have capital left in the deal. And that's how I approach things. If they can handle that, right? Knowing that they're gonna have capital, or at least with my model, right? If my client or partner knows that in most cases, we're gonna probably have capital tied up for a good 5 to 10 years on each investment, I will bring them some of the best deals that they've ever seen because I know that they can swing it. And I know that I'm gonna get supported like I need. and I know that I'm going to get compensated, and I know that I can pay my teammates and the people that we hire to work, we can actually pay them for the work that we do. Imagine that as an investor, getting paid to do the work, okay? So that's point one on ways we can combat that. Number two, actually, this would be number 5, okay? So the last video, I went over the first 3. This time we're going over the next 3. So this would be number 5, right? And this is an assumption that I've made. It's an expectation that not just real estate investors have, but real estate practitioners too. It's easy to get carried away. And we assume this, that what's working well now and what worked well for the last few years will continue to work. Okay, this is a tough one because there are a number of factors and circumstances that may come up that are out of our control. We may run out of investor capital. Interest rates may double or almost double in an 8-month time frame, okay? We could get another lockdown again at some point in the future, right? We may end up going through more warfare across the globe that affects the trade and the cost of material. And we may deal with immigration issues, so it's harder to get good residents or good workers. You get the idea. So as we're a way to be able to combat that, okay, we really need to be on the ball, okay? As entrepreneurs, okay, as service providers, okay, we need to be seeking good counsel, however you may do that, okay? If you can, if you have mentors for different areas of your life or different aspects of your business, that is a key thing. I think meeting regularly with some type of CPA, accountant, they might be an MBA, and then that, along with that, perhaps meeting with some type of tax advisor so that each, year, of course, but perhaps each quarter, you can really look at, okay, you can definitely look at what has happened the last couple years, but we really need to look at the trailing last, 3 to 6 months, okay? And then along with that, seeing how our strategy actually worked out, how the chips fell on those last few deals that you've done or the last 3 to 6 months. And then also looking at the opportunities that you are currently involved in, and then the opportunities that are coming your way. And we have to determine, okay, does it make sense for us to continue moving forward in the way that we have been doing, understanding that things around us have shifted and evolved? I'll give another quick example. At the start of 2023, okay, I had been helping a number of investors through the investment process as part of my real estate investor concierge program. And on top of that, I was assisting 2 different business partners with our own investments, okay? And this was a combination of, networking to find leads, closing those leads, part of that, the funding and the financing, okay? And then we were doing renovation projects, okay? And then we were refinancing. And then from there, we were doing either rentals or seller financing. So that was the start of 2023 for me. And I realized, when I did a refinance at 8.75%, I thought about that was first quarter, okay? First, maybe second quarter 2023. I did a refinance on a 30-year non-QM loan at 8.75%. And I realized, okay, not only was that refi, the interest rate on that refi, significantly higher than what we were doing, what my clients and I were doing just a handful of months ago. Oh wait, we also, needed to go a little bit further on the rehab. So we ended up going, about $15,000 over budget on the rehab, right? And then I also noticed that the lender, my mortgage broker we were working with, started to push back a little bit harder on us. So the criteria and the process to get through a refi was harder. So after that, I literally told both business partners and all of the clients who would listen, I said, look, we're going to have to make some type of adjustment. I don't necessarily want to. You know, what we have built up to this point has been pretty solid, but I'm afraid if we continue moving forward, we're going to put our businesses and your guys', some of my capital, my time and energy at risk for loss. And I'm not for that. And fortunately, some of my clients, all of them listened, right? Because we were at a point where we were kind of running out of our own resources and so forth. The writing was on the wall, so they got it. And that point, the conversation really changed. So all the new investors and the clients or potential customers or clients who had reached out from that point on, I had to talk to them and I had to change the conversation saying, yeah, I'm glad that you've been tuning in and tracking what we've been doing for the last 3, 4, 5 years, but things are different now. So that, kind of a longer answer there, but that goes right along with how we can combat or go in more prepared to constantly changing, shifting, and evolving real estate industry and financial system as a whole, right? So that's a key factor. Those are key factors, right? We really need to stay on the ball as good stewards, as not just investors or entrepreneurs, but business leaders, okay? So there's that part. So number 6, another massive expectation desire that I've had, an assumption that a lot of not just real estate people make, but business people make, we can achieve wealth, financial freedom, or lasting success by ourselves or without partnerships. Okay, this is a big one for me because for the longest time, I didn't necessarily want to borrow outside capital. I did not want to use hard money loans. I was really nervous and excited about the idea of partnering up with individuals who could help us grow a business or help me achieve, said goals or targets. And to this day, it's a struggle because I've had to exit a number of partnerships and I've had to end a number of client relationships because there, was no longer an alignment. Okay, I could say that for sure. And sometimes we don't necessarily see eye to eye with those who we are trying to collaborate with. But at the end of the day, we really have to, this could be very vast, and this definitely could be very challenging, and this could be a whole series on its own, but I'll try to keep it somewhat condensed in the context of real estate investing. And we can definitely take it back to the capital aspect for sure. If we are going to grow investment portfolios in 2026 and beyond, right? There's a good chance that we're going to need to, even if they're informal partnerships, right? I believe in partnerships because every time I've partnered with someone, we end up going further than I thought we would go, and we for sure end up going further than I had ever gone before previously on my own or with other collaborations in the past. The challenge is our mindset around it, and then when certain relationships or partnerships don't work out, going through the process of forgiving ourselves, forgiving others, reframing things in a certain way, learning the lessons, and then if we need to take a break to recover, rejuvenate, recharge our batteries, get grounded again, moving forward with the new knowledge and the information and the wisdom that we've acquired from going through whatever we just went through, all with, love and a positive, optimistic attitude. It can take time for us to be able to bounce back. But I think that as business people, as entrepreneurs, if we are to continue moving forward, I believe that this is, what I'm called to do. And I believe that some of y'all out there, if you feel the same way, then we're going to have to partner and get strategic partnerships or full-on actual partnerships. We're going to need to get used to commissioning other people for their services, experts in their field, from the trades, as I've talked about so many times, right? The contractors, the GCs, the tradesmen and women, to the attorneys and the tax advisors, the financial CPAs, advisors, and so forth, and the list goes on. So that is a critical piece. How we can combat that is by knowing, like, hey, I know that I'm going to need help. Okay, how can I take whatever challenging situations or relationships that didn't work out or that I had to step up away from previously, how can I take those lessons learned and move forward, okay, knowing that, hey, this is part of being in business. This is part of growing an enterprise or an empire, if you will, and this is something that we have to work through. So that last one's a toughie. I know it because I recently gone through some relationships and partnerships that didn't work out. And, I finally feel like right now I'm at a point where I'm ready to go big or go in again. But this time knowing, like, hey, here's what I bring to the table. Here's my experience. Here's what I'm looking to do going forward, right? And who can I collaborate with who may be able to bring some other things to the table that I'm lacking in, okay? So I could riff on that for a while, but I'm gonna end it there. Thanks again for tuning in, and let's continue moving forward. Again, check out the YouTube channel. You type in Luther Wilson III. You'll see me talking about real estate, investing, entrepreneurship, and mostly capital, the strategy, and the operations for real estate investors. And feel free to reach out. Hopefully, we could do some business together in the future. All right, that's it. Take care. Peace.